All right, I believe we're live. If you're having any problems hearing me, please let me know. So, today's video is going to be about Section 8 housing, low income housing, and affordable housing. And we're going to be talking about what's available, what's not, and doing fall updates because we're in the holiday season. And I'm expecting that many new things are going to be happening around the country in consideration to HUD and Section 8. So, if you've got questions in relation to HUD, the Housing Authority, disabilities, accommodations, portability, anything under Title 24, and anything related to Section 8, that would be a good time. This is why I host these videos on Sundays. Sometimes I do it in the morning. Videos are all about doing things when you feel like doing it. If I don't feel that kind of in the mood, I don't make the video. So, also, this is a live video as it stands right now, and we'll be live for a little bit. And so I'm going to recognize a few people. Gale Resources, is a longtime member of the channel. Good to see you. Mercedes Lewis, I have a question. She's raising her hand. Miss Lewis, go on and ask. Miss Lewis goes on to say, going to throw this out there. You reading me? Yep, I'm reading you. And looks like Mr. and Mrs. Slack says, do you feel that when you are a tenant or renter that you have no rights? I'm going to answer that question while we wait on Miss Lewis. I hear that a lot because I deal with a lot of clients, probably up to 1,000 in a year. And when you're not apprised of all your rights, especially when you don't have a fine understanding of federal code or regulation or the HA or your housing authority's policies, procedures, and standards, you become more of a victim to these housing authorities. Just to be clear, guys, as I always mention in my videos, HUD that sits in D.C. and its regional offices, there's about 7 of them, that's the federal government. That local housing authority you're dealing with, where people tend to get an attitude, they don't want to answer the phone, they treat you badly, that's your local housing authority that is employed potentially by county employees or private employees. They have nothing to do with HUD. HUD's there if they do something wrong. That's why HUD sues housing authorities. So, now let me clarify that. But yes, I deal with a lot of tenant-related issues where there are a number of issues between the tenant or the renter and also between the housing authority itself. And sometimes we end up filing OBMs with FHEO, which is the federal division of HUD that does investigations. And it depends. Sometimes there are civil rights violations. Sometimes there's simply violations of HUD's own policies. That can also be taken up by an attorney. So let's make one thing very clear. I'm not an attorney. And though I do practice some federal law because of the 21-year course that I've taken of doing this, by virtue, I do know quite a bit, but I'm still not an attorney. So Miss Lewis goes on, so foreclosed home, give me a minute. All right, sounds interesting. Catherine Evans, hello, how are you today? Welcome to the channel. And then Miss Lewis finally asked the question, foreclosed homes or those behind or mortgage right behind, maybe even need some help fixing. Well, foreclosed homes are certainly an issue. It's not so much in my purview unless you got that home under the home ownership program through HUD, then it would be out of my purview. That would be more in line with a broker or real estate agent to deal with it. So I don't know the complexity of your case, Ms. Lewis, but it sounds like, you have a home that's been foreclosed, but I don't see how that would connect into HUD, the housing authority, and so on, unless you got it through that. Gale Resources says, Tara, are you there? Section 8. And then Mr. and Mrs. Slack says, I pay regular rent. Okay, so you're a market rate tenant, which means non-vouchered. Gotcha. And then Ms. Slack goes on to say, great channel always. Well, I appreciate that. Well, you know what, guys? I'm going to talk about a few things while we're kind of whittling away at the questions that are being asked and give a few more people opportunity to show up. I know Sunday is an ideal time to make videos, especially live. Now, many of you already may know these things, but just for those that have not seen some earlier videos, I'm going to go over a few things. And I'm going to readdress questions there on the main screen. First is I want to give you all a link real quick. For those, if y'all have an opportunity and you're in a position to copy and paste this link, take a look. I'm going to shoot it in there. Let me guess. Live chat will not allow me to put in a link That's the part I hate about live chats. They limit the number of words, so if you have a long link, you can't link the damn thing to people. All right, I'm just going to go on and say. So, as many of you know, HUD has made their announcement to address an issue under federal funding, 20,000 vouchers, which is the largest number in probably U.S. history, the largest number of vouchers I've ever seen put on the market since I've been in the industry, and that's 21 years. So, for those of you that have been considering getting housing, getting a voucher, getting subsidy, going under Section 42, Section 811, and so on, now would be an appropriate time to react. I think that we're also in a downtrend season, which means March to the end of summer, which is August, in my opinion. That's when most people try to get a voucher. That's when they want to move and do other things. That's absolutely the worst time to do it. We're past that. Now we're in that golden spot. And so golden meaning September to next March is down season, which means rather than there being a line at Black Friday, there's no line, kind of, which also speaks for the impeccable timing of the government to want to issue the 20,000 vouchers. They didn't do it at high season. They waited. They waited the same way that I've given y'all advice for years now, at least 10 on YouTube. All right, so with the 20,000 vouchers, look, man, it's going to be a voucher party. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to get these, but it definitely means that you would have a higher percentage and ratio at applying at this point than you ever would have in the last 20 years, okay? All right, let's take on a few questions here. Looks like that's an inside conversation between two people in my live channel. So we'll keep going. Second thing is, I want to tell you that for those of you that have struggled with the California situation, as I've mentioned the last 3 years, because of pandemic, self-induced housing market, which created a shortage, which means really rich people buy up all the houses and then they drive the prices up because there's no shortage. And then the pandemic, when you start creating that problem, you had landlords all around California that may have had a property that wasn't that expensive, but by virtue of a squeeze in the market, it turned their dilapidated property that could otherwise barely sell and turned that, $500,000 building into $1 million building. So what do? They think to themselves, well, gee, let's kick everybody with a voucher out. And so a lot of properties were out there available and throughout California where owners just sold. They said, hey, this is going to be the moment where I can actually get money out of this in a lot. So that extracted a lot of housing out of the market, which created a crunch. And of course, California does play a very big role in a high number of homeless activity between San Francisco and LA. The point being is, for the first time in a half decade, HACLA, which for those of you who don't know, that's the Los Angeles Housing Authority, is open for applications. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's probably going to be 100,000 applications, but you'd be foolish not to try. I had a client 2.5 years ago. She's barely 23, barely had any problems. I talk about clients having a lot of preferences, meaning being a veteran, senior, disabled, blind, and all these other issues. And this young lady got a voucher. Okay. So there's possibilities sometimes of just sheer luck with this. I'm going to link that up for you guys. That way you can drive yourself directly to that if you are a resident of Los Angeles Orange. You know what I just discovered? That I was posting the links in the wrong section, and that's why it wouldn't let me do it. So I'm the idiot here. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to post that other link about the 20,000 vouchers. I'm going to give it a minute, then I'm going to post it. So what it was, I was trying to post a link in the searchable emojis. There's 2 different spots where you can do this in live. And in the emoji section, you can look up a particular emoji, and I thought that was the part where I can enter information. That happens when you're in a live video, All right, now on to the 20,000 vouchers. So that's got everybody's curiosity, obviously, because we don't see a lot. We've already been through a lot. We watched the market get crunched real hard where there was barely anything left. It was very difficult to apply, plus it being summer, a recession, a pandemic, and about 11 other things. So, one thing I want to do is go ahead and post this link. And, I'd encourage you guys to read this. I want to tell you something very interesting. Shortly after I posted, now it's to nobody's imagination, I've been doing this longer than anybody out there. So when you spend 10 years on YouTube, you spend 20 doing it, and I publish something, it gets around quick. As a matter of fact, some of my videos because YouTube owns Google and Google owns YouTube. Some of my videos within hours are posted on the first page of Google if it's the right thing. As soon as I posted about that video, which took off like a rocket about the 20,000 vouchers, HUD, all of a sudden, all the links to everything related to 20,000 vouchers started being retracted. In other words, when I went back in, you go into Google, you type in, you set it at news, and then you put in 20,000 vouchers, you can't find but a few articles left. So it's like, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, okay, but I find it imaginative that a week ago there were hundreds of articles on that could easily be found, and now it's all seems very retracted. Like they don't want people to know, but that's the only time you've ever heard me talk about conspiracy. But I got to tell you, it's a little bit surprising that it just disappeared. But I verified, clearly that they're doing that. I just think that it's almost like a media blackout. They don't want people to know. I don't know. All right, but moving on from there. One thing I want to tell you guys also in the earlier video I made today, if you had an opportunity to watch, and it was a non-live video, FMRs and SFMRs, which is fair market rates and small fair market rates. So FMRs are fair market rates for the large city, big population. The small area stuff is for those of you in the rest of America, including rural or outside the big city. So the point I'm trying to get to, guys, is simply this: HUD finally adjusted the course of funding for rents. Okay, if you're a tenant, that comes in the equation of rent reasonableness. How much is my voucher worth, and would the value of that voucher actually rent a place? Most people have been screaming no. Prices and rent went up 20% this year, in some places 40%. So people had vouchers they couldn't use because nobody's rent was affordable. Well, HUD made the changes starting October 1st, 2 days ago. And so the FMRs are an indication now that likely these 20,000 vouchers will all be changed, and in some cases are worth 67% more. An even greater number, including places like Phoenix and LA, it'll take a 20% jump. Now, the likelihood of you being in the same city where it's 67%, that's just an anomaly. But the point is, it's enough to catch up in a lot of areas. So if the FMRs are correct by HUD, that means when housing authorities are issuing your voucher, it's going to be worth more and will come very close, if not just slightly above, what you're going to need to be able to fairly rent a property. This plays on both sides, the renter and the landlord, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and post the small area markets real quick. Now, you hear all that noise in the background. I'm going to introduce you all to one of my kittens. Now, most of you don't know this, unless you've been around my channel a minute. I rescue cats, and my office is filled with them. So is my home. And at any given time, I may have anywhere from 18 to 22 of them. Right now, I hear somebody in the bubble wrap, and I'm pretty sure only a kitten would do that. So y'all bear with me a minute. I'll show you one of my cats. For those who've been around a long time, y'all have seen most of them in my videos because they'll be on the chair, in my hair, and everywhere else. So let's see who we got here. I know who that is. 1 minute. This is Queenie B. She's a Siamese, crystal blue eyes. I'll let her go because she'll shred me. I'll tell you a short story about her real quick, then we'll move on to Section A. She was owned by a really bad owner, locked her in a cage, and whenever they felt like feeding her, they fed her, and when they didn't, they didn't. And she lived her entire life being breeded. Okay? That'd be like taking your wife and sticking her in a broom closet and only giving her water and food every couple of days. When I got her, rescued her, we had to put IV and keep her in the hospital for about 2 weeks. The mental trauma the cat went through was extraordinary because we had to keep faucets running around the house because she didn't trust that anybody would feed her or give her water. So she was an unusual case. But now, as you can see, she gained a lot of weight because when I got her, she was fur on top of bones. There was no muscle mass. So she spent a lot of her time in the bed till she was able to walk. So, moving on from that, That's Queenie B for you guys that are asking and wanted to know from earlier this year, last year when I got her. I've got a lot of stories, many of which I won't talk about because it would make people too emotional if you heard the true story of some of these cats that I've had to rescue. All right, moving on. Mercedes Lewis, I am working against the system to get ahead, which is sad in a way, but savings is. I understand, Miss Lewis. So I'm reading a few comments here. Kathy Evans goes on, my unit apartment is a tax credits. Okay, so that's section 42. Yet in 1 year will no longer be, and they're going back to market rates. And they gave us a 2-year notice. Okay, understood. So they're going to convert, they're going to deprioritize. What happens with section 42 is they enter an agreement with HUD under the Lich program for 40 years of tax credits. They allocate a certain number of units, say there's 100 units, they'll allocate about 30 or so to the seniors and disabled and so on. Once that agreement is toast or the building's sold, it's over with. And that's the unfortunate consequence of that. Gail Resources goes on, she is so pretty. I appreciate that. Miss Lewis goes on to say, oh my God, my daughter's dentist gave her a stuffed kitten like that. She's a little hot rod. And one thing I really enjoy about Miss Queenie is she's got like my other Siamese, she's got her own personality. But she's been so ingratiated to be in her office, in her home, and in her life. So I love to pet her. I know a lot of people think that having a cat stand in your sink and drink water would be disgusting, but we make, that's part of the deal. When you accept certain things in your life, like animals or people, you know what you're going to come into. Just like you can't get mad if the cat jumps in the Christmas tree. You accepted that responsibility. Okay. So, anyways, Kathy Evans, read up, please. And all right, so let's get back to the main part. Besides me and my more stories about the cats. I'm going to go ahead and give you all the FMRs. So I gave you all the small area, and I'm going to give you the main FMRs. Now, what these FMRs will be able to do is tell you kind of how your vouchers will end up. So if you look up your city and all, this is really designed for landlords to determine whether it would be a good investment, how much rent they can charge. But what it's also going to tell you is the likelihood of what the housing authority is going to issue you as a voucher. And when they issue that voucher and they put an amount on there, it's likely to be 20% above or below that number that you're going to see. So I'd encourage you to kind of take a look. That'll give you kind of give you a shot of what it might be if you applied and actually got it. For those of you that I've had the same voucher since 1987. Now would be a great time to have your case reevaluated, have your voucher rent reasonableness reevaluated, and have it get up to standard as the prices are changing. Okay, landlords can raise rent every 6 months, and you should be pushing the housing authority as many times as you can, obviously to keep up with the landlord. Kathy Evans, no questions above. You missed it. All right, well, let's see. I'm going to do a little scroll back here. Let's see. My new voucher, my FMR area is 629. I'm staying where I live. Rent is and has been 420. Signed a lease in March. Office last week approved. Signed yet rent 530. Allowed mid lease. I'm not trying to dodge your question there, Miss Evans, but it'd probably be easier to ask again because I'm having trouble finding it. I hate to freeze up the video, or you could shoot us an email. Beyond that, the other thing is I'm going to do some introductions, which I probably should have done early on. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com, work with clients every year. This year, we had a rough start to the year. Matter of fact, let me give you some links real quick. More links. And of course, those are not ready. So this will be to our booking software and to our website. There we go. So we're with a lot of clients. Navigating the system isn't always easy. And a lot of you guys don't simply have operations, policy, procedures, data manuals, Title 24, code of regulation. You don't have a fine understanding. You certainly don't work with current and former housing authority directors and other employees. You don't negotiate with 200 or 300 landlords across 50 states that deal with housing authorities. And so having worked through all these different situations, it gives me an insight into the system where you're simply not going to find. I do realize that YouTube and Google is a great remedy to solve many problems. I've solved many of my own by watching a video. However, the complexity of HUD, the complexity of housing authorities to administer programs, and the willingness to give you a voucher is probably one of the most painful things that I've ever seen administered out of all things in life. When you look at everything that's going on, it would require you to spend at minimum 8 years of study, reading probably around 17,000 manuals, more than 1, maybe 2 million pages of data, policy, procedures. And then you would have to multiply that effort depending on where you're dealing with for each housing authority. So around 5,200 housing authorities. Now, that's not including the boilerplate stuff that you get from HUD itself. So they issue mandates. And then across from there, you have to look at the people that create and design this. HUD doesn't design every law or procedure. It's actually people like Nana McCabe. They underwrite all this stuff, which goes to a college, to brilliant students who write these programs out and determine the fate of this stuff. And of course, these children that are living at Harvard don't really fucking have any idea what it's like to be low income. They have no really fucking idea of what it might mean to actually live on a fixed income, but yet they do write our policies. You see the point? So it's like an ostrich with their head in the sand, and that's how the system works. It's broken. Then you add in the human elements. We deal with humans every day in interactions through housing authorities, underpaid people working in an office where it's more like a tyranny, and then they're undertrained. They lack empathy, and a lot of them they may decide they don't like you because of your tone, the color of your skin, a lot of things. Let's make no mistake, America hasn't changed that much in 200 years. I'm not suggesting every housing authority's got a problem with discrimination or bigotry and other issues or extremism, but the human element of it certainly does. I see it play out plenty. So, all those culminating factors trying to get vouchers, and then we add in a pandemic, which started, right? Then we get aggressive and we try to buy up. The rich people want to buy all the houses up, which creates a shortage of housing that drives up markets to inflation. The inflation further drives us to where we're kind of price gouging and reselling things. Then we have housing authorities that were closed, didn't want to issue vouchers. And then so many factors rolled into one thing. We had at one point a little war going on, trying to support over there in Europe. So all the worst things piled into one thing. And finally, we're starting to see some alleviation of that. And the market's starting to correct. But only for vouchers. That's it, man. But it is a broken system. One thing I'm going to tell you guys, it doesn't take the most brightest person on the planet to understand one thing. If you go to a housing authority and they say we have a lottery, now when you hear the word lottery, does that not imply that there's a game? Simple logic. We're having a lottery. That means we're playing a game. Am I playing to win or am I playing to lose? You see the point, guys? The only way you defeat this system is by weaponizing your case and understanding specifically the preferences in which they choose people, how many vouchers they have, and whether or not they're going to give it to you. And if that means applying it 400 across America, and then understanding some of the trickier methods of getting instant portability and other parts that would, let's just call them loopholes, okay? That would grant you the ability to grab a voucher in a cornfield in Iowa where the population is 12 people, the little housing authority, snatch a voucher there and port it back to your city. There are lots of ways. But in order to arrive at that, you've got to spend 10 or 20 years like I am reading through all of it just to figure out where the holes are. And if you implemented that walking the client through the hole, have you violated the federal law? Have you attracted the attention of HUD? I certainly have. I've been on here preaching for so long and teaching that I have .govs visit my channel on a constant basis. I don't know if they're deciding if they want to come and arrest me, or they want to investigate me, or they're just purely curious. But the curiosity has lasted now over 20 years. But more than anything, I think that because we are adequately represented by an attorney, we deal with clients with a contractual agreement, and we carefully review all the things that we do. We're registered with the Secretary of State, bonding and insurance. I think that we're stable and we're safe at this point, but you never know. If you play to exploit these loopholes, You never know. You never know which direction to go. But for now, I would say that our success rate is now back up to 91%. So most clients that come to us is just by virtue of advice, and a lot more are seeking vouchers and the best method in which to get through that. I don't believe in principle you need to wait 15 years on a waiting list, okay? If a housing authority says, hey, we're having a lottery, that means they're going to give it to whoever they want to, no matter what you do. Why even bother? Pick the next 5 counties surrounding you. You know, did you know housing authorities, they're public. They're subject to the public, which means if you put out an open public request, they have to give you certain things if you know what to ask for, like the number of vouchers, the reasons they're issuing. Let's give a great example. If a housing authority says, "Hey, we've got an open waiting list right now. We got 5,000 vouchers. We want to give them away. We want to get you housed." But the true story of that would be that, yeah, we've got an open waiting list. We got 5,000 vouchers. And here's the but. Here's the truth, but never the whole truth. The whole truth would be more like, we've got 5,000 vouchers, but unfortunately, the funding for the 5,000 vouchers is only going to be for domestic violence victims, the homeless, and the disabled. And so everybody applies, but the reality is 90% of them will get swept in the trash can. They don't have to tell you they're sweeping you in the trash can. You see the point? Applying doesn't always mean what you think it does. That's why it's important to compel them under state and federal law to do open public requests so you're able to ascertain what they've got, and does your case match that? And understanding preferences. A lot of you guys think when you apply, that's the end of the road. It is not. Most applications are pre-applications, which means they're scanning, they're probing to eliminate. So when you apply, you put your name, your number, and so on, and your income, and whether you're old or not. That's only a pre-application. It only means they're weeding you out. They want to know if you even meet the basic criteria. Do you have an ID? Oh, well, she doesn't have an ID. Nothing's going to happen. And then once you get past that, if you manage to get past that round, you go into primary application. And that's actually where the preferences are usually built in. And there can be any number of preferences, okay? And just because that is the process for getting a voucher in that way, that is not the only way vouchers are actually granted. One of the many ways are, if we consider this, one, if you have a natural disaster, a hurricane, a flood, a fire, and so on, any act of nature of God that includes FEMA visiting you, or a national declaration, statewide or countywide declaration of a disaster, then FEMA and Red Cross do have the ability to assess and cut vouchers. Goes on to another curious topic that most of you may not even realize. Housing authorities, whether they've been closed, say you tell me, you call my LA, that's nonsense. You can't get a voucher in my county. They're closed. They've been closed for a decade. That don't mean jack. Housing authorities will receive funding from the federal government, often keep in reserve 15% of all the funding. So when I say funding, that also means vouchers. What do they keep that for? They keep those for vouchers that they're not talking about. They're not going to post in the front door. That's for cases where possibly the district attorney's office referred a domestic violence victim over and then to give emergency a voucher. It may be a case where this is somebody that's a federal witness or has been a federal antagonist, and they need an emergency voucher. So they're kept in reserve. And beyond that, there's even more ways, because the housing authority is not the only company in town that issues vouchers that are using federal dollars. You have the continuum of care, you have Housing First, and all of these issue emergency housing vouchers, rapid rehousing, supportive housing, and so on. So the housing authority is not the only person in town that can do it. And then referrals can press it through. FEMA and Red Cross carries the highest tier of referral. Why? Because of the feds. Then you step it down to county level, where you're getting county referrals from the district attorney's office, or a doctor that works at a free clinic that is owned by the state or the county. His comes in second referral. Then you have your lower tier stuff through nonprofits and charities and so on, where there's questionable integrity to it. You see, so now you multiply by multiply by multiply. You see, we've got all those different referrals versus all those different counties versus all those different types of vouchers. And then we multiply that again by 3 on the fact that there are vouchers. There is subsidized housing, which requires no voucher. And then there's COC, or continuum of care. And so that then splits the avenue 3 different ways. So it's not like the videos where you see these people make a video saying they're a consultant on all these things and they don't know anything, right? Because that was just a tip of the spear of all this to be included with this. Anyways, I'm going to address a few questions before we go on. Crystal Addy message retract. Resources says so true. Mercedes Lewis says domestic. Yes, I'm being here due to that. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, not that many comments. So, all that being said, I'm going to open it up again to questions if y'all have any. It looks like we've got a interesting crowd today. There doesn't seem to be that many questions. So I guess a lot of times people are new to the channel and they watch for a little bit. I think as Americans, we've learned to detect bullshit easily. And so we have to watch and listen long enough to determine whether or not it's safe to take the advice, whether or not the advice is sound, and whether or not the advice you're taking is going to actually get you anywhere. But that, my friends, I always recommend just checking out the company, verifying that they have no liens, holds, judgments, federal investigations. Call the DOJ, Department of Justice. Call HUD. Lots of ways to establish. I'm not just a talking head. I've been in the industry 21 years. So just to be very clear, there are a lot of videos being made about Section 8. These young ladies and men, one day they're a master expert at fidget spinners. The next day they decide that they're going to make little cute videos about Section 8. 3 steps to getting a voucher in, 20 minutes. These delusional little characters that roll around YouTube, hoping to earn little nickels and pennies off ads with cute little videos. These are not consultants. These are fools. There's a lot of fools. Trust me. There's a fool on Amazon. She has written a silly book. It's like a children's book of nonsense, rainbows and fantasies. I've never read so much bullshit in my life. And then you've got another fella, Caucasian guy like myself. He sells subscriptions to bullshit. Calls itself I'm not going to say it because YouTube doesn't allow me to call anybody out on YouTube. But, let's be honest, folks. If you could talk for an hour in the video without reading a teleprompter and you actually know what the hell you're saying, you wouldn't be writing books and subscriptions. This is a serious subject. Toying with people, toying with seniors and disabled for fun to make nickels and dimes on YouTube is not a joke. Housing is a very critical issue for a lot of people. And so are the parents with disabled children, seniors that have been severely disabled, and so many others. And have so many fools on YouTube making videos about shit they don't even know. But what can you say? We live in a society where capitalism does reign heavily. So, all right, moving on. Crystal Addy, yes, questionable integrity stayed in the shelter where suddenly the funds disappeared and they almost had to close the doors. And that was one of several in the area. Well, homeless shelters are, if that's what you're referring to, and I think you are, I've addressed many shelters. I'll tell you a curious case out of Atlanta. A homeless shelter dumped 38 cases on our company. It was easier to hold out the golden bucket to collect change than it was. They like collecting money. They love the fresh, clean air conditioning, the treats and chandeliers, and new computers, the leather chair. But when it came to dealing with the trash that was in the building, the people, they couldn't be bothered with them. They let them in, throw them a slice of burn-up pizza, collect that change, get that change bucket out, collecting, but they couldn't be bothered to work nobody's case to actually get them housing. Homeless shelters, in my opinion, in most cases, okay, half of them are just a complete fraud, whether they're religious or not. And so is the Shelter Plus program, it's garbage as well. I've had to rescue more people out of that in more states. Just again, to make a very clear distinction, I haven't anything against any religion, and it has no connecting value to what I'm saying about these shelters. I'm just saying that most of them quite enjoy the federal dollars they get in order to keep a person. If you've ever stayed in a shelter, you ever wonder why they try to put you out in 30 days, it's not because you've done something wrong. It's because the money dries up and they need you to leave. See the point? But there are plenty of respectable shelters that have done a good job and have people that actually care. But there's far more that don't. So I agree and I don't agree. Ms. Lewis, I need to push a proposal by you leading up to knowledge and making sense out of what I'm saying. Gabby, state won't help me. Well, Gabby, what state are you in, and what kind of help are you trying to get? That's the question of the hour. He says, "Oh, I see an earlier comment by Gabby saying moving between states with no income." Okay, well, if you move between states with no income and you're looking for housing, the only path you can take, the housing authority ain't going to take you without an income. Okay, so in that case, you'd have to be assessed by a coordinated entry location and considered for one of three things. That would be permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, or an EHB. And it would be a different type of EHB because it would be slightly different than the ones issued by the housing authority. Okay, so they help you float you for a little bit, help pay your rent, get you a key and a lease, but ultimately the responsibility will rely on you because they would expect that you would come out of the hardship. Moving on from that, I'll tell you what, there's been a little bit of fire and brimstone in this video, but I'm feeling it today because I also feel good about this season. We've seen an insufferable amount of drama in this nation this year. And so when it comes to housing and people really needing it, so it's such a nice, fresh breath to see that we're now in October. We're going into the holidays. We've got a lot of vouchers coming out as of October 1st under federal guidelines. We have higher fair market rents. So out of all the things that are going wrong, this is actually going right. And it's a cooling season. So I feel exceptional about what's going to happen between October and March. But here's that warning I always give you guys. Look, man, if you guys are considering doing housing or you're needing help and so on, and you reach out to my company and you wait to do that until next March, the party will be over. I'm telling you guys, 20,000 vouchers are going to go fast. Don't call in March and say, oh, man, I don't know what's going on. I should have did something. October to March is the golden period during the year to do this stuff. All the right things are in place. If you're going to step on the gas, do it. If not, then it's going to be a whole lot of hardship next summer. Because just like stimulus checks, the party will be over eventually. And I suspect that it's going to be a sobering moment when we reach probably April next year. Because a lot of this money being thrown around is not going to be around anymore. It'll have been absorbed. I can tell you that by the high call volume we've been getting around the office. Also, for those of you in the state of Florida and upper East Coast that were affected by Hurricane Ian, I'll tell you this, if you got FEMA and the Red Cross out there, you need to go out there and visit those folks. You need to tell them that you're in a housing crisis. Those people, FEMA is a federal agency. Red Cross is not. It's a nonprofit. However, both have the ability to give you a direct federal referral to get emergency housing voucher, and it can be expedited. It's the most powerful kind of referral you can get outside of getting one from a DA, district attorney's office, okay? So if you've been actually affected that way by that hurricane or anything else happens this year where it's a snowstorm, a fire, God works to plan it again. If they make a national declaration for your county or your state or so on, and you see FEMA out there, forget about the housing authority. Go down there, talk to those folks because they have the ability to press this right on through. Okay? Let that be a warning to you for you guys that just got soaked out there in Florida and parts of, I think, North Carolina. Got a lot of calls about that. I referred everybody back to FEMA. Gabby says, BW, disabilities. Yes, they will, says Miss Lewis. Crystal Annie, Las Vegas area, Skid Row. I think Vegas may be reopening, actually, Crystal. It might be something you'd be looking at. And I know you made a comment about Skid Row, but that would definitely be Los Angeles. So, all right, guys, we talked plenty here, and I'm giving the advice I'd like to give. I know some of you had questions. Please keep in mind I can't get into too complicated questions in the video because it would hold the video hostage. And besides, how else would I sit there and run my mouth for an hour if I had to stop for every question? I'm just being cute. So, look, if y'all want to join me again, we do lives on Sundays. Also, this Tuesday, I want to talk to you guys about portability, getting a voucher, porting it, okay, and accommodations and how that affects you. I want to teach you some of the intricacies of that. If you weaponize your case and you understand how to use it properly, you can start bending the hand of the housing authority to your will. Until you learn to do that, you guys will always be a victim of housing authorities in whatever their policy are. If the lady talks to you like a $3 hooker on 3rd Street, it's because she believes that you're not apprised of your rights and that you can talk to you any old way. And that's generally what goes on in a lot of housing authorities. They treat people pretty badly. They talk to them badly too. Because housing authorities view this as one thing. It is their job to administer vouchers if you qualify. So sorry, they're not going to teach you about how to qualify or any of that. Nor do most of them have any empathy or sympathy. But let's be realistic. As I've said in many videos, I've never known housing authority employees to have a prayer circle check on you, even give a damn. In fact, I've never once heard of any situation in any of the 600 videos where people came to line and go, "Oh well, man, the housing authority I dealt with, man, they were so awesome. You know, they did everything for me. They gave me a voucher 3 days. I've never seen that in my life. But granted, there are some that are pretty good actually. All right, guys, let me wrap it up. Or I keep talking trash about the housing authorities. Just one of those deals, you know. So Tuesday will be the next video, then Thursday, and then we'll do live on Sunday. And accommodations and portability will be the primary factors. And then I think Thursday we'll cover seniors and the disabled. Keep in mind, in 3 months, when we hit the January 1st, they're going to rewrite everything again. It's a new year. So the policies will all change. And then I get to read it all over again, every inch of it. And then we'll have to all learn again. So I would advise not watching old videos. Every year, everything changes. And housing authorities these days can change policies every month if they want to. Hopefully they don't. So you can imagine the nightmare trying to keep up with thousands of them. All right, guys, I've enjoyed having y'all tonight, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like a sugar-free video where people don't sugarcoat shit and just tell you the blatant truth, then you'll enjoy it. If it offends you, then this is not for you. There are other people that make silly videos, and they can give you some tips and tricks on how to get a voucher in 8 minutes if you just stomp your foot twice, look to the left, and other crazy shit like that, okay? If you want actual real consulting advice, I'd advise you returning, even if it offends you. All right, y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.